What if silence was your most feared weapon and your most forgotten one? You ever notice how some people don't need to raise their voice, don't need to argue, don't even need to explain? They just vanish, and suddenly the room feels colder. The energy shifts. People start to panic. Not because of what was said, but because of what's no longer being given. That's not emptiness. That's power. See, the world doesn't respect noise. It responds to absence, to what's pulled away. What if the real power you've been craving isn't in what you say, but in what you stop offering on demand? Carl Jung knew this. He called it individuation, the death of performance, the birth of wholeness. You stop trying to be liked, and for the first time you become real. But here's the question that starts everything. When you stop being available, who gets exposed first, you or them? And more importantly, who do you become when you stop being the rescuer, the responder, the reliable one? Let's look closer at what you've really been giving away, without even realizing it. Always replying fast, smiling when tired, saying yes when your soul is screaming no. You've done it so long it doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. It feels like survival. But let's call it what it is. This isn't kindness. This is emotional slavery dressed up as compassion. You're not being nice. You're being trained. Somewhere along the line, someone taught you that love had a condition. And that condition was access. Stay reachable. Stay agreeable. Stay small enough to not be a problem, but big enough to always be available when they need something from you. And so, your time became a free-for-all. Your energy became public property. And your soul started burning in silence. Now your presence is being treated like a vending machine. Insert a crisis. Push a button. Out comes your comfort. No thank you. No refills. Just expectation. But here's the breaking point. What happens when you stop showing up just so they feel safe and start protecting your peace instead? To understand how this all began, we need to talk about the mask and why you started wearing it. Carl Jung called it the persona, a psychological costume we put on just to survive approval. And it usually starts young. Not because you're fake, but because you're afraid. Afraid of being rejected. Afraid of being the problem. Afraid of being left behind if you show too much of the real you. So what do? You smile when you want to scream. You nod when your boundaries are being crushed. You apologize just to keep the peace you never even started. Each smile becomes a leash. Each apology another layer of camouflage. And over time, you become everyone's favorite version of you, except your own. You've been so busy shape-shifting to stay loved, you forgot what it feels like to be seen. And here's the hardest truth. The more they get of you, the less they respect what they never had to earn. But what's the actual cost of this? Carl Jung didn't just study the mind. He studied its power source. He saw it as psychic energy, not just thoughts or feelings, but a limited reservoir. And every time you react, explain, or overextend, you spend it. You're leaking energy in places that never deserved it. Crafting perfect replies to people who barely read them. Playing therapist to manipulators who never heal, only feed. Running mental marathons for people who wouldn't crawl for you if you were drowning. Your energy's not leaking, it's being siphoned by hands that smile in your face while draining your soul behind your back. And the worst part? You noticed, you felt it, but you kept giving, hoping one day they'd finally give back. They didn't. They won't. You're not burnt out. You're being bled by emotional vampires who drink from your compliance. And the more predictable your reactions, the easier the feeding. And what happens when the tap runs dry? That's when the puppeteers show their true faces. Let me make something clear. They don't want you. They want your access, your availability, your response, your energy on demand. It's not love. It's control dressed in emotional flattery. And here's how they play the game. They press your guilt buttons, make you feel like saying no is betrayal, that boundaries make you cold. They trigger your reflexes. One sigh, one silence, one "are you okay?" And suddenly you're back in the loop, explaining, fixing, absorbing. They poke your deepest wounds, to see if you'll still bleed on command, to test if they still own the volume of your voice. But the moment you stop reacting, you're not being distant, you're not being rude, you're dismantling their illusion of power, because predictable people are programmable. And when you become unpredictable, you become unmanageable. Power doesn't beg, it vanishes. Now, we'll look at what truly scares the manipulator when you go silent. Silence isn't retreat. It's surveillance. It's strategy. It's sovereignty. They tell you silence is passive, weak, avoidant. But let's tell the truth. They panic. Not because you disappeared, but because their control script stopped working. Their playbook depended on your reaction, your defense, your explanation, and now nothing. And in that nothing, they lose everything. Because stillness isn't emptiness. It's the kingdom you protect when you finally stop offering explanations to people who only listen to twist, not to understand. It's the invisible armor that doesn't need to be loud to be lethal. When silence speaks, manipulation dies. And now that you've gone quiet, watch what shadows get loud. Because silence has a way of shaking every hand that thought it had you on a string. And with that silence comes a detox. Not of your body, but of your guilt. Yes, at first it stings. You'll be called distant, cold. You'll hear it in the tone of their voice. You've changed, and they're right, but not in the way they think. They're not angry because you changed. They're furious because you stopped being their puppet. Because your compliance used to serve their comfort, and now you're reclaiming what was never theirs to manage. See, real growth? It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It moves like a blade through silk, quiet, precise, irreversible. It slices through every dynamic built on your emotional availability. Growth isn't loud. It's lethal to dynamics built on your silence. And guilt? Guilt is just the echo. A programmed alarm going off because you finally locked the door on people who were only loyal to your exhaustion. If this has you pausing, good. Let it. And if it's already shifting something inside you, subscribe to the channel and like this video, because we're not just healing here. We're reclaiming. What if guilt is just the smoke that rises when your old self starts to burn? That fire clears the way for something rare. Sacred solitude. Withdrawal isn't sadness. It's strategy. The sharpest move on the battlefield is silence. Not the kind that sulks or hides, but the kind that calculates. You stop showing up for people who treat your presence like a utility bill, only paid attention to when they need something. You stop arguing with those who were never listening, and instead you vanish from the role they cast you in. Because here's the truth. Strategic silence isn't absence. It's presence at its purest. It's the calm after you detonate the illusion, like the still forest after war, where breath returns, but only for those who survived their own destruction. This is the space they feared you'd find, where no one can reach you unless invited, where your energy is yours again. Here, you stop being reactive clay and become the sculptor. This isn't loneliness. This is fortress mode. And once you step into this quiet, you begin to remember what power actually feels like. Still, calm, undisturbed. This is where you reclaim the throne within and exile everything that ever made you question it. With that power back in your hands, the next move is yours, and it's selective. You've been a public fountain, drained, tapped, expected to overflow even when you're empty. But that ends now. It's time to become a private well. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone earns it. And from this moment forward, you stop serving what doesn't nourish you. Pause before replying. If it costs you peace, it's too expensive. Choose stillness over explanation, because the people who truly see you won't require footnotes. And when you whisper, "Not today," you're not avoiding. You're deploying an energetic firewall. A silent line that says, "My space is no longer a shared resource," because your peace is not a team sport. It's a sovereign state. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. Let the world adjust to your silence. Let them sit with the version of you that no longer performs. And when you start saying no without guilt, without explanation, without flinching, watch who still shows up. Not for what you give, but for who you finally become. Those who remain will face a version of you they never expected. You will lose things. You'll lose the roles that made you useful, not loved, not honored, just a functional. You'll watch faces disappear. Faces that only smiled when you were silent. People who mistook your availability for identity. And when that silence becomes your shield, their discomfort will become loud. Let them talk. Let them twist the story. Let them grieve the version of you that never truly existed. Because this isn't rejection. It's refinement. And in that sacred space they can no longer enter, you'll begin to hear something again. Your own voice. The one that isn't shaped by guilt or fear or obligation. The one that whispers, "This is who I really am." You'll start to feel your own rhythm. Not just reacting to everyone else's chaos, but moving by your own compass. Direction returns. Integrity sharpens. Peace stops asking permission to exist. You don't just set boundaries. You're reborn through them. And those who can't reach you anymore, they were never meant to walk the next chapter with you. So let them gossip. Let them guess. You're not the echo anymore, you're the origin. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." He wasn't talking about shadowy metaphors. He was talking about your life, your patterns, your silence, your addiction to being needed. You don't evolve by pretending to be light. You evolve by meeting the parts of you that learn to serve, when what you really needed was to stand. You don't rise by pleasing. You rise by facing what you fear losing, and letting it fall even if it's half your world. Because the truth is this, becoming unavailable isn't detachment. It's the emergence of your authentic frequency, the one that isn't shaped by trauma or demand or manipulation, but by truth and choice. So now take a breath, not the kind that prepares to explain, but the kind that reminds you you don't owe clarity to chaos. Now look at me, really look. Are you ready to be feared? Not because you became cold, but because you finally protected your peace, because you stopped apologizing for boundaries, because you walked away without explaining the exit. This isn't about rebellion, it's about reclamation. If this message hits something real, comment below, "I choose my peace." No explanations, no justifications, just truth. Subscribe to this channel, not as a favor, but as a symbol, a quiet vow that you're done living on mute and ready to reclaim every part of yourself they once used. Because the moment you stop being available, they don't just lose access, They lose control of the throne they were never meant to sit on.